All roads lead to Rome, the seat of temporal power on earth for Christ the Saviour, as embodied by the Supreme Pontiff, the Bishop of Rome, and head of the unified Church. For close to 2 millennia, the Holy Curia has been governed from Vatican Hill, at the heart of Rome, and since the ultimate heresy of the First Crusade, it has fought to prevent Satan's triumph over God's creation. Every year, pilgrims travel the long roads to the Holy City to bear witness to the divine wonders of Rome. Streams of the faithful converge into tributaries that join great flowing rivers of humanity, moving along ever broader highways toward the distant hills of Rome. The pilgrims' motivations are as varied as they are themselves. They come in search of penance, forgiveness, blessing, judgment, reassurance, or freedom from sin. Prayers, hymns, and whispered catechisms spill from the pilgrims as they endure in the thronging multitude. They fill the church coffers with offerings and swell the armies of the Captain General of the Church. The Papal States appear to the traveller as rich and blessed lands. Their great estates appear unspoiled by war, as orchards ripe with fruit and grapes stretch across the countryside. In the walled villages populated by close-knit, hard-eyed folk, a trained eye will spot the signs of conflict. Picturesque but functional, towers and forts sit atop every peak and crag, and there are ever-present patrols of armed horsemen. These are lands that have seen bitter fighting since before the birth of Christ. As the last bastion of his kingdom on earth, they remain on constant guard against the machinations of Lucifer and his devils. The first fortifications of Rome rise on the horizon, leagues from the city itself. Slope-walled, arrowhead-shaped ravelins split the highways, guns trained on travellers and would-be invaders alike. Behind them lie the great star forts, built to unify and modernize the patchwork of crumbling local fortifications left behind after the War of Triclavianism. The outskirts of Rome were demolished, and the rubble used to build the sloping curtain walls that now protect the city like a crown of thorns. Along the roadsides, a growing sprawl has emerged, cluttered with workshops, barracks, graveyards and chapels, as the vast press of humanity converges here. Above the crowds, mendicant monks cling to pillars and harangue the faithless for their lack of fervour, while mounted patrols of Swiss guards push through the crush, ever watchful for unrest. It is here, beyond the walls, that the traveller is at their greatest peril. Stampedes and riots have brought death to thousands within sight of the Holy See. The last leagues of the route into Rome are lined with towering wooden martyr crosses, studded with burnished bronze nails, commemorating the souls of fallen crusaders. By tradition, each cross was hewn from a cedar found in the Holy Land, but such profligate indulgence was outlawed by Pope Boniface XIII, when he learned of the cost of transportation across the Mediterranean. Now, holy orders and crusaders bring fresh crosses with them from their homeland when they travel to Rome for their pontifical blessing. They erect and dedicate them as their final act before departing to march to the front lines. Within the walls of Rome, a dizzying collision of ancient and modern unfolds, with thousand-year-old edifices surrounded by clattering tramcars, electrical cables, and clambering pipeworks. Broad thoroughfares quickly spiderweb into side streets and alleyways, interrupted by small walled estates and tiny well-manicured parks that are fiercely defended against encroaching development. The embassies of all the nations aligned against hell can be found among these twisted byways. The Iron Sultanate, Abyssinia, England, Prussia, France, and dozens of others. Their diverse accents and customs only add to the sense of chaos and dislocation. Brazen angels bearing silver trumpets adorn pillars at every junction. From these, official announcements and, on holy days, the words of the Supreme Pontiff himself can be heard, carried on wires by the miracle of telegraphy. It is a sign of the times that such measures are necessary. For the past 20 years, the Vatican itself and even St. Peter's Square may no longer be approached by the merely devout. Since the tragedy of the broken Trinity on St. Peter's Day in 1894, only attested clergy and their retinues are permitted to set foot within the Holy See. The faithful mutter that this is a grave injustice. After all, was it not the renegade Cardinal Grente who knowingly brought death commandos into the square? Striking with furious purpose, even the Swiss Guard was unable to prevent them from slaying Pope Boniface XVI on the very steps of the episcopal throne. Since that terrible day, holy steel and dedicated flesh have encircled the Vatican City, night and day. The buildings of Rome are tall, yet the towering basilica of the Vatican seems to overshadow them all. A man-made mountain of arches, spires and buttresses reaching heavenward, the basilica has been the work of millions of hands over centuries. Much like Rome, it lacks overall coherence, as successive generations have harnessed new technologies and styles in their quest to reach ever closer to God. In recent decades, polished steel and stained glass have come to the forefront, creating a dazzling play of colours across the whole city as the sun completes its journey. Nearby, on the banks of the river Tiber, stands the great statue of the Archangel Michael rising from atop the castle Sant Angelo. Legend has it that in the 6th century, the Archangel appeared atop the castle Sant Angelo to signal the end of a plague of unbelief. At the dawning of the 12th century, he returned with sword drawn, pointed towards the Holy Land, marking the onset of the ultimate heresy. In honour of this divine intervention, increasingly grand statues of the Archangel have been raised atop the castle's formidable walls, first of marble and then in bronze. The newest statue of the Archangel is a truly titanic construction, so immense that its skeletal framework alone took 30 years to complete. Only now is the statue nearing the full coverage of plated layers of bronze, glass, and gold that the architect's mind envisioned. Against all this, resting beneath the feet of the statue, the squat rotunda of the Castle Sant Angelo may at first appear insignificant. Yet, its thick walls are strong enough to defy all the legions of hell. The ancient building has never held greater significance since it was granted to the mandalists, who conduct their ongoing research into the blessed transubstantiation of the Metachrists. For all its faith and weapons, it is unlikely that Christendom could continue to withstand Lucifer's armies were it not for the work of the mandalists. The winged and pendant thurifers and self-renewing swine are but the simplest examples of their craft. It is the communicants and the towering immortal paladins that embody the mandalist blessings of Christ made flesh upon the sinful earth. Alrighty, another slice of lore pulled straight from the Trench Crusade rulebook, which I am once again holding in my hand like a tiny baby. So this one is about the Papal States, and the art for this is once again like really dope, and it kind of gives you an idea of a number of months ago I was talking about how I had incorrectly scaled Trench Crusade in my head because there wasn't a tremendous amount of like landscape stuff. We had seen little bits of like the Synod maybe, and the pilgrims marching to those weird carved mountains and things like that, but we hadn't seen much that established what the scale of civilization was actually at. Like, what do these places look like? I was kind of imagining closer to reality, I think, than what the game is actually going with, and I really appreciate what the game is actually going with. So you've got Rome, which is this tremendously developed yet loyal to its history place where there's like, 1,000-year-old buildings side by side with these tremendous advances in technology that have been made. And security is obviously super tight, and despite the signs of kind of opulence and comfort that might exist there to some of the people who are traveling from all over the world to see the place, security is super high. They've had their issues. They've been attacked at different points, and they've learned how to integrate clever and effective defense works into their day-to-day lives. And of course, being the seat of the church and being the seat of the Pope and all that kind of stuff, they have grown to expect that they might be a target. And I would imagine if you live in a place like Rome or any really well built up, very important city for the faithful, the spectre of old Antioch probably hangs over every day. Like, you know, a city was just completely destroyed via means infernal as far as anybody knows. So that might always be like kind of hanging there over you. So there's some pretty cool stuff mentioned in this lore. If you look very carefully at the art, you will see these little flying creatures called thorifers. And thorifers in real life basically are the people who hold the censers, those smoking thoribles basically, in various religious traditions. When I was a kid, at a funeral there would always be a lit thorible basically with some incense in it as part of the burial, and somebody would have to hold that. They were the thorifer. So these guys are weird little flying creatures basically that have been created by the mandalist monks, and we can assume they fly around the skies of Rome both as sentries and security, and also likely purifying via smoke the area and stuff like that. And that's just such a neat little thing to see. It's stuff like that lets you know we probably haven't even seen close to how weird Trench Crusade can be in the grand scheme of things, and it lets you know how weird it is just for normal people. Well, not weird, I guess. If you live in Rome, it's Rome is Rome, but how different life is on the day-to-day. It's not like all the weird developments and things like the communicants and stuff are limited simply to the front lines here. Like, you can see a thorifer flying across the sky. That's certainly quite interesting. So there's a big mention made at the end of the lore about the Mandalist monks and how important they are, which we had somewhat drawn that conclusion that potentially the War of Triclavianism was related to the development of the communicants, and this doesn't back that up in any way, but it once again reinforces how incredibly important the communicants were. They basically turned the war. It was a losing effort, right, until we had communicants on our side. And there's another mention here that's really, really cool. Where did it go? It was the self-renewing swine. The winged and pendant thorifers and self-renewing swine are but simple examples of their craft. So they have pigs that can renew their flesh, right? I've often wondered how the food economy is in the Trench Crusade universe, and what it's like trying to feed like endless droves of people essentially, as huge tracts of arable land within the earth have been lost. So this is obviously part of it, these self-renewing swine. And from what we know about the Metachrists, the implication heavily is that they can part with flesh and grow it back. So that's probably the first thing that they figured out, because that's what they knew the Metachrists could do. Probably after sampling them, they witnessed the grow back and they were like, oh, I wonder if we can replicate that in animals. That would be pretty handy. So the Mendalist monks are chopping it up, basically getting work done and saving the world, which is quite interesting. There was a mention of a Cardinal Grente as being the person who let in the death commandos. One of the things you'll notice that is pretty consistent is much of hell's biggest moments on Earth are born through treachery of people. You've got the Prince of Wales selling out the Navy, the British Navy. Now you've got this. These are big moments where people betray and seek to advance their station. They're trying to make these domains into the domains of hell and likely have some form of dominion over that, even though I think some guy called Cardinal Grente being the king of any infernal domain seems reasonably unlikely. Not picking on him or anything, but whatever. So it's once again shown here that it's always a weak-willed, well, not always, but it's often a weak-willed person, somebody who is unable to withstand the temptations of hell, the concept of furtherance. I had a little look, and there was a legitimate Cardinal Grente. He was a Frenchman, and he was born in 1872, so he was too young. In here, in the French Crusade world, I don't think he could have possibly made it to Cardinal by 94. It just doesn't seem tremendously likely because he was only ordained into the priesthood. Now, maybe he was fast-tracked, I don't know, maybe it is the same guy, but I also think it's kind of interesting because he was a subject of some character assassination post-mortem. So maybe this is that case too. Maybe it wasn't really Cardinal Grente, maybe it was somebody else, and Cardinal Grente was sold out to cover up the crimes of somebody else. Who knows? It's all very strange. But yeah, basically Rome, much bigger than you can imagine it to be. Take whatever you've been imagining these places to be and probably scale them up by 2. As regards to the size of their construction, like taking 30 years to build a statue of the Archangel Michael. It's not because they were lazy, it's because that's how big it was. So yeah, just really fun lore. All this lore from the book has been really fun. I'm not sure what's coming tomorrow. I have a reasonably busy day, but I will see if I can get something else cooked up from the book. If not, definitely the day after. I'll have a lot of stuff coming between now and Christmas. So thank you so much for watching. Remember to like the video only if you actually liked the video. If you're new here and you want to like and subscribe, I'm not going to hold it against you if you should do that. And remember to get into your subs feed and clean that shit out. There's going to be a lot of people in there that you don't watch anymore. Just get rid of the things you don't like. Use your subscription tab on YouTube. That's your main page. I see people complaining all the time that YouTube isn't magically letting them know when people update. It is. You're not looking in the right place. It's not going to tell you on your home screen, which is just general algo stuff ends up there. So anyway, enough of that. Let me know what you think of the Papal States and their lore in the comment section below, and I will talk to you all very soon.